So my name is Ahsha Davis. I am currently a second year grad student getting a Master's of Arts in Electronic Media Studies. I came to CMU in 2014 and started my undergrad then. I wasn't originally a BCA major. I was originally a chemical engineering major and then switched to BCA around the end of my sophomore year. So I started working around the radio station and helping out in the BCA department. And then eventually I started helping out with some of the MHTV work, specifically working with Summit Sessions Live, which is a live show that showcases music. And now as a grad student, I'm doing that same thing, just continuously helping out where I can and being a part of the broadcasting department. I honestly say one of my favorite moments was actually when I was taking your class when we did our project with our where we got to be creative and do like a bunch of different pieces of things. And so in that project, I think I did like a music sweeper, I did a segment of sports broadcasting, and then I did like another music promo. And I was so proud of myself because I I had never explored being in audio and video producing, and so doing that project, I felt really confident and I was like really happy that it came out the way it came out because I was like, wow, like I can actually do this and not sound terrible. So I would say that was my first like moment in media where I was like, oh my goodness, this is super fun. Like I can't wait to continue to do this. If I had another one, I would definitely say when we launched the radio show that we work with now called Call a Psychiatrist, which focuses on talking about mental health. And so every week we talk about different topics surrounding mental health, like depression, anxiety, um, mental health in minority communities, medications, all these topics. It started last year and we've done amazing ever since. And I feel like this show has definitely proven that you can really get an audience out in any kind of topic and like everyone needs to hear it. And so I think that I was really impressed to know that people cared about mental health like I did. And so I think that was definitely those are my two favorite moments of all time, like for sure.
That's
I think as a woman, I find myself having to prove a lot, just wanting to put myself out there because I know there are not a lot of spaces and opportunities for people like me, especially as a woman of color. There's just so many barriers. So I've also struggled with, you know, in the broadcasting department, sometimes being the only person of color in a room. Now that I'm in grad school, that's not the case. My grad cohort is predominantly of color, which is really nice. But I think before that, there were classes, and this wasn't even in just broadcasting, this was just in all my classes where there were times where it was just me. And I always had to feel the need to like raise my hand and answer questions to kind of prove that one, I was like smart, and two, that I was engaged, that I wasn't a student who wasn't paying attention. And then also, I think because of the media industry being predominantly male, I did find it hard to kind of like figure out why I wanted to do this, right? Like I had to really contemplate what's so important about media to me that I would want to continue to do this for the rest of my life. And knowing that if I go into certain fields that men are going to show up more than I will. And so in film production specifically, that's so common. Most film producers that people can name off the top of their head are men. And so I battled with like my entire reasoning for wanting to be in media for a while. But then people like Maggie and people like Amy Sindick and people like Sarah Adams kind of reassured what I was doing and showing me like you can do this too, or Tiff. Um and everyone, has always talked about our field and our department. We have some really strong professors, both male and female. And so I think having those female professors though kind of made me think I can do this too. So those were some of the things I struggle with. I would definitely say people's implicit biases are the first thing. I think that sometimes when I show up in spaces, I think about how people view me before I can talk, right? Like I think about people's prejudgments well before they think about me. And so I think implicit bias has played a major role in that because, for Black women, it's like you're too aggressive and you're too loud and you're too, you're just all over and you're emotional and all these things. And I value being the aggressive person that I am, but I'm not aggressive in like a mean way. I'm aggressive about the work that I do because I'm passionate about it. And people think aggression and passion are separate, and sometimes they are, but my aggression that people notice is my passion, but they don't recognize it as that because of preconceived notions that Black women are supposed to always be angry. um and so those implicit biases are always there, and I think people should recognize, like, just because someone is from, these different cities does not mean that that's how they show up. Like I said, I'm from Detroit, so anytime I tell someone from Detroit, I can already see in their eyes how they view me before they even finish getting to know me. And there's so many other different intersectionalities that I have that people overreach and don't think about because they assume that I'm this person. I've always been a student person. Like, I've always loved academia. I've loved school since I was a kid. But people don't know that about me. People don't know that I'm a science fiction nerd. People don't know that the kind of movies I want to produce are science fiction and fantasy. People don't know that I actually have a love for paleontology. Like, there are small little things about me that people never would know. And they don't assume that because they think, why would this young Black girl care about dinosaurs? Why would this young Black girl even like science? Again, I used to be a chemistry major and did exceptionally well in chemistry. I love science in general. And so there's also these implicit biases when I do tell people about those things, right? They say, "Oh, you like science? I would have imagined." Well, why didn't you imagine that? Like, what about me and who I am? Don't you think I could be associated with a field like that? And so I think, as a Black woman at a predominantly white institution, those implicit biases come up very often. And then I also think that, people have to be more understanding that, in order for us to continue to learn and grow, we have to help each other. So I need people to, when I walk in a room, I don't need people to cradle me. Oh, how are you? I feel like people try to go above and beyond because they recognize the oppression and the marginalization of Black women. But I don't need people to continuously carry the broken Black woman narrative everywhere. Treat me like a human, treat me like you would talk to anybody else, but also do it in a way where you're not, stereotyping me and making me feel like I don't belong in those spaces. And then, of course, I always say this, my advice to Black women is to be loud, to stand up, to speak up. You know, I always raise my hand in classes. I sit in the front in classes. I was in the front in your class. Like, Maggie will tell you in her 210 class, I was always actively engaging. I was always answering questions because I didn't want everyone else in the room to think, oh, this is just another Black person who doesn't care about school. My main goal in life is to beat statistics. I don't want to be one of those 1 in 4 Black people don't go to college, right? And so I went to college and those kind of things. So, yeah, those are some of the things that I want people to remember and think about as they meet other Black women at predominantly white institutions, that we are not we are not broken. We just want people to like us for who we are rather than what media portrays us to be. When I first got into working in radio, I was on the news team and I did production team as well that same year. And I told myself, I want to be on in these positions to make other students have an opportunity. So when I became program director for the radio station, my immediate thought was to just find more students of color to bring to the radio station, find more people who could be creative in being a DJ. And so I just started recruiting folk, and we had a really big team. But I also did a lot of work in student affairs and higher education. I was a part of a lot of different conferences on campus, working in different offices. So I said to myself, how can I make, BCA more connected to campus? Because I think it was odd that, people didn't know that we had a student run radio station and that people could utilize us in many ways to promote events or host events. And so I think the first time where I was able to kind of bring other people was just like, in random moments of like me saying to Jim, hey, Jim, um, the SAI office is hosting Exploration Central. Can we do live coverage of the event and have student org presidents come into the radio station and talk about their orgs? And so I started doing small little projects like that. And then next thing you know, people just started kind of, looking at me and going, hey, how can we use a radio station? And then it was just about making those meaningful connections with other offices to show them what we can do as a radio station. And so I've been able to get students to be a part of different things based off of that. One of the most proudest moments, I think, and it wasn't students, it was actually faculty, was last month I did a project called Black History Month was shining a light on faculty. And so I interviewed over like 25 faculty members who were African American, and we played their interviews on air. And they were small clips of just hearing like their story, where people can contact them and how they can be mentored by them. And so those were just little things that I was just like, you know what, why aren't we doing this? We're a radio station, we can promote that kind of content. And so from then on, I just kept recruiting folks to be a part of different things. So I think my biggest way in helping students is taking the students that I worked with in higher education and bringing them to the broadcasting world in some way. So right now, I'm deciding on kind of my next steps. Figuring out if I want to go to a film school. That's probably the next bet, is to go to film school, just because I really, really, really want to get deeper into my studies. Like I said, I love academics, but also we're in a pandemic, and getting a job right now just does not seem like the move because there's a lot of places that aren't hiring, and there's just so much going on with the government. So we're going to go do more school and get an MFA, just because like I said, one of my goals is to beat statistics, and one of my main goals is to have 4 degrees before the age of 30. So we're on degree number 3, which would be awesome. I don't know if the other one will get through by 30, but we might start it before 30, so that way I will be almost done with it, because the goal is to get a PhD in film and media studies. And then eventually, when I'm done with like working in production and directing, I want to actually go be a college, like I want to be a guest lecturer at universities and teach them about film and media, and especially like Black women. So those are the goals that I have for the next like 10, 20 years in my life. But yes, I am graduating this spring. So trying to go to film school, get those extra credentials, and then hopefully work for like, I don't know, Marvel or George Lucas. Those are like the top two that I would love to just be on those sets in any capacity. I don't care if I'm the coffee person. I just want to be there and just witness greatness happen. So yeah, that's what I want to do. And then I also want to open a film school for kids, because I think kids have an imagination that is so wild. And I'm like, as a kid, I always had a wild imagination. So one of my long term goals is to open a junior film academy for children to learn like how to make cute little movies on like their phones and stuff like that. So those are the things that I want to do before age 80.